Hey, hello to all, and thank you for being here with us. We are here in this show of Believe in Yourself, Believe in Your Business, and really we believe that that is exactly what is needed in this world, and that's why we are doing this program. And I am thankful that I have today Dr. Stefan. I am happy that you are here with us. I know that you have a lot of wisdom to share and an amazing story that I am really looking forward to know better. So thank you again, Stefan, for accepting this invitation. I want to know, we always start with who you were. I know that you have a lot of things that you have done already in your life, but first, before you started to believe in yourself, some moments that you can share with us. And I know that you went through a problem later when you were older, but maybe start with a little bit of your childhood or teenagers, how you were, and from there we can start to develop your story.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm always so excited to talk about this. So we'll start all the way back. We moved to the States in 99 when I was 7, which there you go. I can already tell you my age at that point. But we moved to the States when I was 7. We moved from Russia. And we kind of as we were growing up, I never realized this. It was very interesting, but this past weekend, as my mom depicted that entire story for me as well, I didn't know the financial troubles that my parents were having. They really kept us as kids. I have an older brother. The two of us didn't really ever seem to notice it. We didn't seem to want for a whole lot, but we made do with what we had, and then we honestly, I don't think of it as any kind of overly like poverty time or anything like that. As we grew up, when I was a kid, I was always a very active kid. I loved just running around, climbing everything. I would repeatedly jump the stairs. My brother and I roughhoused way too much. We had a lot of holes that littered the stairs because we would break the drywall because our knees or something would hit in. Eventually, my mom would always cover it up with pictures that we drew. So we had a lot of pictures up because we made a lot of holes. As I progressed and as I got into middle school at one point, I recognized that I didn't really like gym. I didn't think that it was fun, and I wanted to play music. And if you played music and you were in orchestra, you didn't have to go to gym. So I said, all right, there we go. That's what I'm going to do. So I started playing music. I started moving a little bit less. I started exercising a little bit less. And by the time of high school, I was already overweight. At that point, my parents, they were trying to do their best. They were trying to tell me, hey, this is probably not healthy for you. You probably should lose some weight. But the way that they were saying it ended up being more so that I thought that, okay, this is a really bad thing. And I got into some bad patterns of where I thought, okay, I was really bad, not necessarily worthless, but I need to do something about this. And I got to the point where I thought I was being healthy because I was eating a cucumber and a green apple for lunch and then going to the gym for 2 or 3 hours. And I'm like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm trying to get healthy. And so I kind of developed almost this pattern of bad eating as well as over exercising. And the one thing that I'll say that was really great around all of this is it started this passion back up of movement. At least I started liking it more and pushing myself more. And I don't want to blame my parents for any of that. Truthfully, they were trying to do the best that they thought they could, and they just wanted me to be healthier. So then I went to undergrad, and initially I went for music because I still tried to keep that alive of thinking, that's it, I'm going to play in orchestras, that's what I'm going to do. And I quickly realized that going to school for music and playing music are very different things. And I lost that passion of constantly being in class and being taught music all the time. So I switched. And initially, I did a small switch to computer science and realized I would also not be happy doing that. And then I switched to kinesiology, which is effectively exercise science. I really started doing a whole lot more movement. I even started a CrossFit club. We call it XFit because we didn't have the copyright to call it CrossFit Club at that time. And then my parents said, we want a grad school. And I thought, I don't even know what to do. I was thinking maybe I was going to start and open up a gym or something because I love movement so much. But grad school, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. And so my parents said, okay, just look around for it. So I looked at different things and I found occupational therapy and physical therapy as things that I could do with the degree I was getting. And when I found physical therapy, I thought, you get paid to do this? This is amazing. I'm I want to do this. Didn't look back, went right into grad school. And first semester of grad school is really when things started to change. And it's crazy thinking back to it now, because I feel that the change has now become so much of my identity that I'm going, wow, there was a time before this. But I got a little bit of a discomfort in my eye that first semester. And to give a little background to this, the right eye, the optic nerve in that eye never developed from birth. It was a lazy eye where it kind of drifted off to the side. I went to all sorts of therapies as a kid. That never really worked. And part of that is because the optic nerve was damaged. The eye itself is fine, but the nerve, you can't really do anything about that. So I developed a little bit of pain and discomfort in my other eye, my good eye, as I called it back then. And I went to a doctor. They said, it's fine, bacterial infection. Don't worry about it. Here's an antibiotic. You'll be fine. Okay. Didn't fix it. Went back. They said, don't worry. This is a viral infection. Here's a thing. Here's a cream. It's going to be fine. Didn't fix it. At this point, they were just saying, it's inflamed. Let's just pump it full of steroids and it'll be okay. So yeah, we basically covered up the problem, and there was a bunch of steroids in the eye. So the inflammation went down. But then by the beginning of that next semester in January, so 3 or 4 months later, it came back full force. And no amount of steroids or anything was helping. And I was lucky enough to be in Philadelphia at that time for grad school. And they have one of the best eye institutes and eye hospitals in the US. And when I went there, they immediately looked at me and they said, we see this all the time. This is a parasite. It's
Wow.
commonly misdiagnosed, and that's the biggest problem about it. And that really started that journey, that now I had this parasite in my eye, and what in the world was I going to do? At this point, I had to get out of school. And we went through a lot of different medications, multiple surgeries, and the whole thing basically resulted in I got my vision back a little bit. I was able to thankfully finish school, but it was kind of in and out. My vision was sometimes would be better, sometimes worse, and I couldn't really rely on the other eye to do much of anything. So 6 surgeries down and all of that constant back and forth, I finally finished and I got my doctorate. I had to skip a spring break in order to just stay and study. I had to basically not take a summer vacation so that I could stay and finish off that grad school piece of it. But I made it. The important part was that I made it. And at that point, I decided, okay, I'm going to go into the clinic. There we are. We're going to start this. Initially, my very first job, I felt that it wasn't challenging me enough intellectually. And so I went to the place I really wanted to work in, and they had a lot of hands-on therapies. And the beautiful part there is, well, since I couldn't see now, and at this point, I could read somewhat with reading glasses, but I couldn't drive by any means. So doing a hands-on therapy, that was perfect for me. You don't have to have your vision quite as much. All right, I can do this. But
Just
unfortunately,
just
as I
here,
kept going,
Stefan, just to go a little bit like on the thing, because I believe that this is incredible. Really, when you are talking about like having a parasite, what
right.
happened inside of you, at least in your body, like with what you started to feel like, okay, finally I understand, but now I am more nervous. Like what
Uh-huh.
happened on that moment that you, because I know that we are going to continue with what you are saying, but I just want
Sure.
to focus a little bit on that part, like, because sometimes we have like difficult things that are happening
Hmm.
in our lives. Maybe it's not exactly in our bodies as a sickness, but the way you react like changes everything. And that's why I want to ask you, okay, what happened with you? They tell you, okay, you have a parasite. You're like, what the heck? Like, why? I have been working with on years on this.
Yeah. There were a lot of emotions there. I think the biggest part was, okay, we finally know what it is. We finally know the problem. But the story that I like to tell there is I was very grateful to them. I was in a lot of pain, and I was very grateful to the doctors because they knew exactly what it was. And that very first visit, when they said, we're pretty much positive this is a parasite, we need to take a biopsy. And in order to take a biopsy, they basically have to scrape off 2/3 of the surface layer of your eye. It is about as bad as it sounds. But at that point, all I could think about is I finally have an answer. I finally have something that I can do. That's what I felt in that moment. The pain and everything that came afterwards, when the small amount of anesthetic wore off and then all the medications that we had to put in there, that was an entirely different challenge, because I had to put in, there was basically a derivative of bleach. It was like diluted bleach that I had to put in 3 drops every hour. And when I say every
Wow.
hour, I mean every single hour. So I could only sleep for 45 minutes because you had to space them out 5 minutes apart. And so that whole part, it was painful. It was rough to get through. But the mindset was always, but we know what we're doing next. There's another thing that we can try. There was only one point that we finally got to. This is the desperate play. If this doesn't work, we may not be able to save the eye and the rest of it. And that was a portion where they had to basically give me a transplant of a piece of the eye. And the reason that's scary is the parasite eats that tissue. So if we did it wrong and we did it too soon, it could have all gone right back, and it could have been worse because it would have just eaten the transplant and it could have all gotten worse. That was the only time that all of a sudden I went, okay, this is just pure dumb luck. Like, we don't know, we can't know. But my family, oh, they supported me throughout that entire session. I was very, very lucky over those months that they seemed to go, well, it's okay. We'll do the next thing. We'll do the next thing. I will say there was one thing that I specifically remember, however, is in the doctor's office, I would sit with my dad, and we would repeatedly get bad news. Things weren't getting better for the first several months, even after we found out it was a parasite, because it had been there for so long. And anytime we would get bad news, my dad would do a really deep sigh of just, it felt so defeated, as if, okay, that's it. And I felt that I had to be strong for him, because in a way, almost, I felt that maybe he wasn't going to be strong there for me. And that, strangely, in a way, helped me get through it and helped me kind of push through that to where I knew, okay, there has to be a way. We're gonna kind of figure it out.
Wow. And that's huge because you were like very fast forward with all the things, and I know that you have an amazing story. But this
Mhm.
part that you were like struggling with that, and even struggling, like you were giving hope to your dad, and you were the one that was with the problems. So that is huge.
Yeah, and it's something that my mom, I know that she doesn't remember those times fondly. There were obviously terrible times, but she always said that about how strong I was. And one of the ways was actually something that my dad said to me. So this entire time, me going through school and all of these things, music was kind of a, well, like, I'm a son of a physicist and an engineer. Music is, that's strange to do that. That's the arts. And when I was in the midst of all of this, I asked my dad, I went, hey, what happens if I lose the eye? Like, I'm probably not going to be able to be a physical therapist or do any of these things. What am I going to do? And he said, what do you mean? You're just going to do music? And him saying that, even though I didn't think through of what that would mean or what I would do with music, just knowing that he just went, we're going to find a way no matter what it is. I think that also helped give that hope that there's always a way, even though it may not be the way we immediately think about.
That's really cool because sometimes we are, and even in businesses and everything that we are doing, sometimes we are thinking like, why you can be like depressed on this thing, and you are telling something amazing because it's like I can see.
Mhm.
So it's not something like, okay, maybe I don't have taste right now, that is horrible at the same time, but really you can see it's huge. And when you are saying that, it's like, but I don't see, but I will see a way, I will look for a way
Mhm.
to even live if this is the case at the end. And that is really powerful. Have that type of belief in you, that is great. So let's continue with your story because that is.
Sure. And it's interesting that you say this kind of belief in me, because as I kept on going through school, and then finally I got into the clinic and everything, I generally had this belief of, I know I can do this, because when I interact with patients, I still feel that passion of being able to talk to people, helping people. But as I got into the clinic and as I got to the job that I wanted with the hands-on therapies, I started recognizing something, that patients would come in, I would give them exercises, do the hands-on, I would make them feel better, But then they would come back a year later and it'd be the same issues. We were just fixing symptoms. We weren't fixing the actual problem, which may be how they're sitting at work, that they're just not moving enough in general, whatever that piece kind of may be. As all of this was going on, as I was realizing this, my vision continued to deteriorate, because what happened was that the pressure was too high and it was further and further basically compressing the optic nerve of that left eye, of the formerly known as good eye. And finally, right around Christmas, a perfect Christmas present of 2020, I'm sorry, 2021, of 2021, I finally got the diagnosis of, you are legally blind. It's there, it's gone. So to the
Wow.
point where nothing is really going to help. The interesting part there is, a couple months before, I was already having this idea of, I should start my own business. Because as this all kept going, I don't know if it was the energy or just my undying optimism around it all. I know I'm not going to be able to do things the way other people do them. I'm not. I can't see the way other people see. But that doesn't mean that I can't do the certain things. It's just going to be different and it's going to be unique in its own specific way. So I already started working and mocking things up and thinking about this. And then I finally kind of get this diagnosis. And I said, okay, I don't know if I'm ready to take the leap yet. I don't know if I'm ready to jump and just start my own business. But I was struggling with my employer of figuring out, doing work is hard, because I was trying to document on a computer and I can barely see. I was zooming in all the way and it really wasn't working. And this was hilarious because they called me in for a meeting. And this was exactly just a couple days after I finally got the diagnosis in the paper to say I am legally blind. And I thought, great, I'm going to come into this meeting with my employer and I'm going to say, hey guys, I'm going to need accommodations because I am actually legally blind. So let's figure something out. I got into the meeting and they said, we're putting you on a performance plan. You're not meeting the requirements we need you to meet. And I went, oh, well, interesting enough. Here's the reason why I'm not meeting a lot of those requirements. The issue was that we then got into this whole thing where they said that they wanted me to meet the requirements before they gave me accommodations, which doesn't make sense because I couldn't meet the requirements because I needed accommodations. And we were in talks with HR and all this stuff, and it just seemed like such a big headache. And then I got COVID. And because it's a physical therapy clinic, I had to quarantine for 2 weeks. And I had further complications with COVID to where I could barely stand. I could stand for 15 minutes and then I would get chest pain, like heart pain. And so I had to stay out even longer. I stayed out for 6 weeks total from the clinic. And by the end of that time, I once again reached out to HR and said, hey guys, I really don't want to go back to this incredibly stressful environment. Can we find a way to do something? And they didn't seem to be very receptive. So I said, you know what? I'm done. I think this is enough messages from the universe to say, you need to do your own thing. You need to go and figure out how to do this yourself and stop trying to do this for somebody else. And so February of 2022, of 2021, I'm all over the place. I jumped into it and I just started my own business.
And what are you doing now?
So now I'm basically working as this business is Love to Move, where I basically consult and mentor companies and individuals about how to reduce how much they're sitting so that they can improve productivity, so they can improve their health. And the big thing is just to change the culture that we're working in, because I think that it's easy to tell people to go exercise more, but that doesn't help. People have been doing that for decades and we're trending downward. So I work with you to make sure that work is actually healthy, as opposed to telling you to add in a bunch of stuff outside of work to improve your health.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about that, how that works, how
Sure.
you're applying that.
So a lot of times when people think about doing more movement, they think about, I need to move more, which that sounds like, oh, I should go for a walk during lunch, or I'm going to get up every 20 minutes and do a stretch. That's a great place to start, but you can't really do that and scale that. That will always interrupt the work that you're doing. So we do a little bit of that just to get people building the habit, and because it's easy to start with a couple minutes, but effectively we need to shift to sitting less. And what's sitting less, why that's different from moving more, is sitting less is you doing the exact same tasks that you're doing, but in a non-seated position. So can we do Zoom calls standing up? I proudly wear the mantle of I have sat for 2 Zoom calls over the last year. All the rest of them I stand up for. Can you pace while you're on the phone? Are there certain emails or things that you can do where you can take your laptop, put it on the counter, and then 10, 15 minutes, you're starting to work there? What are the ways we can start implementing this so that you're not sitting down the entire time, but also I'm not asking you to do things that aren't work related? And that can change. That changes from individual to individual and from team to team. So even though I do go in and maybe speak to hundreds of people about something, only a few of them are going to implement it. So I prefer to work with smaller teams of 25 or less. And most of the times, the bigger organizations, we can chunk them down into teams of 25 or less so that we can really figure out, okay, what's going on and how can your team start to change this culture? Do we need to do breaks in the middle of Zoom calls? Do we need to set off times for people so that they know what they need to do and stand up and move around so that they can improve their work as well as their health?
So, in your experience, how much time is needed for people to start to, okay, I hear what you are saying, but I don't have time and I am focused and I have a lot of things. So, how much time is needed to get like the awareness of, okay, now I understand why I need to stand up and be doing a lot of the things that Stefan is telling me now. Because at the beginning, it's like, of course, that is great, that is awesome, and the next day like, okay, that is great, but I have to do this and I have to finish this work, and the following day is like, I don't even remember when I have to do that. So how that works, at least in your point of view, how much time is needed, who has to be thinking about this?
So, that's a really great question, because what I don't want it to be like, and what I work really hard for it not to be, is that you now have to think about it all the time, because we have to set it up to where the habit is easy to maintain. The issues with habits is, before people were saying 21 days is enough to ensure a habit. Realistically, when I'm working with people and what I'm seeing, it's really going to take at the very least about 3 months, and then even upward to a year, depending on how big these changes necessarily have to be in order to start instilling these habits. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to start seeing results sooner. It's more along the lines of, it's going to start taking a little less effort by 3 months, so that you're not constantly thinking, oh, I need to get up and I need to stretch. Oh, I need to do this. You're going to start putting the reminders in place, or the specific tasks are already going to be adapted to, okay, I always do this standing up. You don't even have to think about standing up to do it. That's just second nature. So it's at the very least about 3 months of just constantly working at it. But we always start out very small. I don't, because people think, okay, that's it. I'm going to stand up for 2 hours every single day at work. That's way too big of a start. If you've been sitting for 13, 14 hours a day, start with 20, 30 minutes spread out throughout the day. Don't start with 2 hours. You're not going to be able to maintain that. That's going to throw off your work schedule way too much.
Awesome. And Stefan, how that you feel that that relates to everything that you share with us at the beginning? I see a lot of things that you were like, even for example, when you are saying like, okay, I am losing my eye and I have to start to, you had a lot of resilience, like even like looking for ways to make it happen, or even have a plan B that, okay, I am doing my best, but at the end life has to decide after what is going to happen, or God is going to decide. So
Mhm.
how it works with you, the relation between the story that you have been living and how you feel as an entrepreneur in this area of low to move.
It's a great question. And so I wrote a book called Sit Less. And part of the book, we follow the main character. Her name is Alice. And there was a very specific way that I wrote this character. She's starting to implement some of the things that I'm talking about, but repeatedly throughout the book, she backslides. She fails on things, things don't work out. And it was the exact same with my eye as I was going up. We tried new medications and various things. There were plenty of things that did not work. They might have made things even worse. The fact was that we just got back into it and we tried something else. We tried and we kept on improving. And do I think that we had the best result possible? Of course not. My vision isn't back to where it was. I mean, my eye now is effectively useless, and I use predominantly my other eye that was damaged from birth. Same thing with being an entrepreneur. It's not going to be win-win-win. It's there. You're going to have some losses. You're going to have some failures. But then how do you learn and how do you go back into it? And sometimes, and this is I think what we don't talk about enough is if you failed, you may not need to change anything. You may just have to try the same thing again and again and again. And the thing itself is fine, and you don't necessarily need to change it. Other times, you might need to make the adjustments, and you just keep on learning and keep on growing. I think that's the biggest part from all of that.
I'm part of the belief that you have created, because that's exactly what I'm hearing. It's like, for example, I had a conversation a few days ago and talking with a person that was telling me, okay, really, if you want to improve your life and everything, you have to stop asking why you, or why this happened to me, or why this issue is coming when I am doing my best and I am creating something and I am helping more people and I am trying to help. Because you can be saying that, like, okay, your job has been like, even in the uh, in all the things in the doctor side of kinesiology that you were doing, is like you are trying to help people.
Hmm.
And you can be like, but why me? Why I'm having this issue when I am helping people to become better, when I am helping others to be better? It's like maybe it's better to another person that doesn't care about their eyes, or anything. But why me? And sometimes we are like asking that question, but uh, what I hear from him was telling, what I stopped to do is I stopped asking why to me, and I started to ask how, how I
Hmm.
can make this possible. Even if I have these limitations, I am going to find the how in other ways. So suddenly I can do it. It's so what I hear in your story is that, like, I am not looking for the why, but I'm looking for the how.
I think that's very well put. It is very much the how, and maybe sometimes you have to adjust the what to a certain degree, but really you should just figure out the how. And until you try, you can't really know. I will say there are times when I may think about my eye, or something limits me, or where somebody sends me and they're like, read this, and I go, oh my goodness, to read, that is so much. And it's not as if I always have these perfect days. Sometimes I might break down and I might cry thinking about, oh my goodness, I lost my eye, I lost my ability to see. But in the end, I can't change it. I can't do, we've tried. There's nothing to be done. And so instead of thinking about why has this happened to me? How awful is this? Like, okay, well, there's still so many things that I can do. And I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of all of the other things that are possible for me.
Well, that is huge, Stefan. Do you have a way that people can connect with you and start to learn more about this, like, mission that you have right now, to help them to move better, move more, and start to have a better life with that?
Absolutely. One of the easiest ways is stefanzavalin.com. Yeah, you can find all of the ways to connect with me there. Also on Instagram, stefan.zavalin. I post most of my things there. And if you're just looking for like little bits of inspiration and just some of that knowledge around how to move better and what to do, Instagram is one of the best places. But in either case, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or even LinkedIn if you just want to direct message me.
Awesome. Do you have like one final word that you can say, like, okay, this is exactly, even if you hear or you didn't hear anything of what we talked today, what is that phrase or that thing that you, okay, if you want to remember something, this is the one thing that I want you to remember about everything or anything that I talked today?
Sure. This is going to be a little bit different because I know I don't want to say something overly cliche, and I want to say something that I've been looking at recently with my work, especially. We think a lot about what's the more good thing that we can do. Let's add more of this good stuff into our life, and more good. Sometimes that seems like too much energy. That might be more exercise, more productivity at work, whatever it is. There is another avenue of seeing, can you subtract the bad? Can you just take away the bad? And if you leave the void, most likely more of the good is going to seep in, but you're not going to have to be as intentional about it. It's just going to find its way there because you're taking away the negativity. And you're not thinking as much as, oh, poor me. Oh, no, I can't do this. So this applies to when I talk about moving more and sitting less. If you just reduce the sitting, the movement will find its way in. If you reduce the amount of junk food you have, healthier food will find its way in. And so if you reduce that negative self-talk to yourself, more positive things will come in. They may not be perfect, they may not be inspirational, but they'll be better than what you had. So don't always think that you have to keep on doing more, more, more. Sometimes it's about doing a little bit of less.
Wow, I love it. Thank you, Stefan. Today was really amazing. And really, if you need to connect with Stefan and you didn't get his name completely or something, you can even reach me and I will direct you with Stefan. Thank you very much. And I hope that we can join very soon again and be like having more conversation like this one because your story is really powerful. And I am thankful for having you here with me. Thank you, Stefan. And thank you, everyone that was here with us today. And thank you, Carla. That's nice to see you here with us. See you, my friends. Bye.
Bye, everyone.